Today we're going to be redesigning Adobe Acrobat, the PDF reader in the Adobe suite of tools, that for some reason has just always had a bit of a weird user experience. Here you can see we've got Adobe Acrobat opened and I'm viewing the current resume, and a couple of things jump out as problems with this UI. Specifically, there seems to be a lot of bloat introduced to the software over a long period of time that kind of manifests itself as all of these different controls off to the right. It looks like there's 20, 30 things I can do with the PDF when the vast majority of the use cases are I want to either read the PDF or I want to fill out a PDF and sign it. There's also lots of confusing buttons that don't really make much sense. I'm not sure what most of these do. Obviously comment and highlight kind of makes sense, but lots of weird controls. Generally speaking, you don't want to just place icons when you could also use a label unless you're dealing with a control that's very common, like closing a modal, for example. So ultimately this leads to just a very confusing user experience, and we're going to try and sort that today. So of course, here we've got the style guide. We're taking everything directly from their UI and we are upgrading them to a more modern font, Satoshi, which gives them a kind of nice modern clean feel, and it has a really performant medium weight font as well, which will let us control the visual hierarchy really intentionally. Here's all the stories, everything I'd want to achieve in a UI like this. Obviously this is a little simplified, but I would imagine that most people want a simpler experience with Adobe Acrobat. They just want to view PDFs, edit them, and then make minor tweaks here and there. Not going to read through these, just going to jump into the redesign and we'll see what we come up with. First thing I want to do is tidy up the navigation, and like many other apps, Adobe Acrobat allows you to open multiple PDFs within the same application. So first thing I'm doing is adding in all the tabs for all the different documents that could be open. And generally speaking, when you have a situation like this, you want to place this before any other main controls, because generally speaking, the controls influence the document, not the entire application itself. The next obvious thing to do here is to take all the file and tool controls and condense them down into their own drop-down menus. That way we can still offer all of the functionality that currently exists, but we also don't take up valuable real estate in the sidebar by displaying every single tool. We just hide it away. When a user clicks on it, we can show them an elaborate drop-down menu if we want to, where they can search tools and browse and whatever, but we don't show it to them immediately upon opening a PDF. And this also opens up an opportunity for us to control the visual hierarchy a little bit better. And usually when you want to make something visible, it's because it's something that users do almost every time. And the vast majority of use cases for Adobe Acrobat is for people to browse PDFs, then fill and sign those PDFs, or share them with someone after they've been filled and signed. So we're making these buttons special and we're placing them in the context of the main menu because those are almost always going to be the primary use case. Another very common use case for Adobe Acrobat is to search through a PDF for very specific keywords. So we're trying to find a way to squeeze the search control into the menu here without, again, overwhelming the user with lots of different controls. And now, of course, when the user's primary use case is to view a PDF, they'll probably also want to navigate through it and zoom in and out at their discretion. So we're adding contextual controls for this specific context of viewing the PDF just above the PDF so that they're local to the thing they're controlling and intuitive to the person browsing. Whenever you have a situation where an app has two modes, you want to consider this pattern where you just place a tab at the top of the screen to switch between those modes. That way you can change all of the controls and elements within that context and not have to worry about it in the other context. This is a huge missed opportunity, I think, for Adobe Acrobat to greatly simplify their UI by splitting the app into essentially two mini apps that do vastly different things. And given that we're now switching context between viewing and editing, it also makes sense to put contextual controls on that same level. So if we're viewing, contextual controls of highlighting and commenting makes sense, so we can add them in that same bar. And presumably when you're editing, you're going to be taken to a beast of an interface where you're doing a lot more to actually build a PDF. But that's a problem for another designer. And it also probably makes sense to just have a context menu pop up whenever you try to highlight something in the PDF viewer. So that's what I'm trying to emulate here with the pre-highlighted text. Okay, there we go. I really genuinely believe that if Adobe switched to a UI like this, people would be so much happier. And there would be just such a huge collective sigh of relief amongst people everywhere that have to fill out insurance forms and deal with PDFs across the board. Everything you could possibly need to do in this UI is significantly simpler. First and foremost, the PDF itself is the focal point of the app. We don't have this sidebar anymore that's kind of splitting my attention. All of the contextual controls are embedded in the upper right. There's still a lot of controls, but now they're labeled and they're oriented in such a way that my attention flows to the more important ones first. Okay, here's where I need to go when I'm done, this export button. Fill and sign, great, I can just immediately go into that mode. Probably the most impactful change is that we now have two different contexts for interacting with the application. We now have viewing, and then presumably we would have another one for editing that would be much more involved, where you'd be able to actually change all of the input fields individually. And now those are obviously very significantly different use cases, so it's appropriate to have a different context altogether, and a header navigation like this does that quite nicely. So overall, let me know what you think. Would this make your life easier, or is it just a different skin of the same problem? I appreciate all the feedback, folks, and if you have any suggestions for anything you'd like to see redesigned, please do pop them in the comments. I promise I am maintaining a long list of user-requested designs. Have a great week. See you in the next one.